What's up, chat? Doug, Steve, random bot in the chat. What's going on? Welcome. My echo is here. What's up, guys? Welcome, 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 welcome. It's good to be back. We are live, and it is just your boy. Greg, unfortunately, had... the work of doom crop up. Anthony, welcome. What's going on, my friend? Yeah, so it's just me tonight. Greg is unfortunately stuck at work. And we're going to talk motor swaps. We're going to talk wherever. We're going to start with that and see where the evening takes us. Kind of tired tonight, so we'll see how long I last. But how's everybody doing tonight? Let's see here. What the hell was that noise? Steve goes, there's a Dark Horse NASCAR available on Forza. Good note. I have to check that out. Doug, thank you for the 100 stars. To make a sock puppet of Greg. I thought about having like an embarrassing picture of Greg as sort of my sidekick for the evening. But why am I so dark? I was trying to get the slideshow to work earlier, and then that consumed my time, and then it was game time. So here we are. Let's try to make me not... Oh, it's the background light. Oh, now we're crazy bright. Yes. Make me look semi-normal here. Alrighty. Andrew, what's going on, man? Welcome back. Steve wrecked on the last lap at Daytona. Seems fitting for our races and what I've experienced so far. That's what she said. Fun fact. That was... Let's see if I can actually find it. Photos. Getting to Anthony here. Press cars. I have deleted it. At any rate, Andrew, been doing pretty good. Tired. There was a bug going around, so that kind of knocked me on my ass for a little bit. Here we go. For Anthony, with your comment, yes, this was in fact a softball team I played on, and ironically, one of our actual one of the golf teams, or one of the golf teams I played in a league with. Uh, so it is. Thank you for pointing that out, Doug. Um, it wasn't intentional. I had to. I kind of wanted to have it chill for a minute, but definitely not as long as this. So, yeah, a lot of moving parts tonight, guys. So what's up? So what I'm gonna do is I don't know if I should really unzoom the crap out of this. Holy shit. What I'm gonna do is I don't know if you guys saw it. The artist formerly known as Donut Media had a video not too long ago, last week sometime, when we originally planned on talking about this, and it was they were doing cheap engine swaps, and they were unconventional swaps, so they weren't your classic K swap or your LS, 2J. The list goes on and on of your yep, those are the traditional engine swap suspects. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, the brim shadow was annoying me. So that got me thinking on engine swaps that are unconventional. Let's say things of that nature. You go swap everything. I see we've gotten into the edibles early, huh, Steve? No, I'm just kidding. So what we're going to do is kind of run down their list and kind of yay or nay it. Please feel free to anyone view it or to anybody watching. Drop your... cancel. Oh, I never saved that. Oops. Feel free to drop any engine swap ideas you have. Again, my only rule is it's got to be unconventional. And it's got to be It's got to be in that vein of swappable. It's got to be in that vein of what's the word I'm looking for here? I'm sure there's some unicorn engine out there that you've always wanted to play with, and it came in 7 cars, total, not 7 different models, 7 cars. Avoid, stuff like that. So throw it in there. So, at any rate, so starting it off, their first engine was the 2.2 liter Ford EcoBoost that you can find in things like the things you can find in the Focus RS, the Mustang EcoBoost, the 4-banger version, that sort of thing. I mean, on paper, it's a very good engine. It can make good power. They're plentiful. If you're doing a rear-wheel drive swap, it's pretty conventional with transmission options, things of that nature. To point out that if you are looking to do this swap, the MT82 that backs it up in the Mustang, it's not great for other chassis, because the shifter is located so far back in the trans. You'd be better off with a CD09 or something like that. It's good engine. They've just never sounded great, in my opinion. It's just the nature of the beast. I don't know. They're capable-ish. I mean, you get 400 horsepower wheel horsepower out of them, which is nothing to sneeze at. But for money, there are some better options on there. The second engine they came out with was the BMW N52, which is the last naturally aspirated straight six that BMW sold here in the United States. If you're a fan of the show, you'll know that I'm not much of a I'm not much of a BMW. Look, they've made some great stuff over the years. It's just they're a pain to work on. They can be unreliable if you're not careful, and if you get a higher mileage example, you're just asking for a headache. It's kind of all the short version of that. Another interesting one that I saw that again you could put in some rear wheel drive. Here's the thing, Anthony. Those BMW mills are incredibly plentiful. They came in literally everything from like '07 to, actually, hold on, I have it here. Scrolling from like '04 to 2015. So they are everywhere, and you can get them for right around anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 with to get a decent mill and everything. So they're plentiful. They're inexpensive, so you can kind of throw them in. You can kind of throw in a backup motor, that sort of a thing, if you're really into it. They can take boost, but they're prone to a lot of stuff. And not for nothing, when you do the swap, might be cheap. Well, but maintenance, parts, things like that might be a little more expensive. Steve goes in chat, I know you said no K-swap, but you didn't say no to other Hondas. Okay, let's just, every Honda you're thinking of, whether it be a B, a J, poor timing of words, but in any rate, we're grown-ups here, right? I mean, an interesting Honda engine. Like the V6s are a little more, they're not as done as much, but they're still kind of common. Honda stuff is inexpensive and swappable for a reason, because they're great engines and they made an ass ton of them. Again, if it's an interesting engine that we really haven't really thought of, sure. But if you come out here with like a B16, in any rate, where was I? All right. The next one, actually, let's just rack through the Germans. The next one was the Audi 2.7T V6. Now, apparently, this is a very popular option for old, beat up, like 996 era 911s and whatever the chassis code for the equivalent Boxsters, etc. were. Apparently, they're making decent power. However, it is a Audi engine, and not saying you need a degree in electrical engineering, but it would help. V12 from a swap. In any rate, and then last of the Germans was the Volkswagen 07K, and it's a 5-cylinder, and these, again, are crazy plentiful. They were in a ton of Jettas, just to name one of the models they were in. It is a 5-cylinder, which I know a lot of you guys in chat are a huge fan of. I could kind of dig it. I could kind of get behind this. I don't know a lot about the engines themselves, but they're pretty capable, and they're pretty good at handling boost to a point. So, it's of the Germans, that would be the one I'd kind of lean towards. Next up is another one that you can find in the quote-unquote entry-level pony car, this time from Chevy. And it's the 3.6-liter LFX. Now, this came in the Camaro. It came in a host of Cadillacs. They make 305 horsepower stock out of the box, which is nothing to sneeze at. Wasn't that long ago when all these pony cars were making about 300 horsepower with the V8. It's got a forged crank, so you could put a little boost to it. And I know a couple of guys have done. I know one guy did a Miata swap and ran like a mid 7-minute time at the Nürburgring. So they're capable engines. Again, you can find them in a ton of stuff. And again, the most expensive you're going to see of these engines is about $3,000. So we're not talking a ton of money for an engine. And then lastly, and this one I think has become more and more and more common, especially for fans of 4-cylinders. But it's the General Motors Ecotec LK9 and LSJ. They are 4-cylinders. You can find the LK9 in like a bunch of Saabs with turbocharging. And the LSJ was the supercharged variant, positive displacement supercharger. That was in like your Cobalt SSs and your Ion Red lines. I've seen a lot of these kind of come through, and excuse me, I've seen a lot of these recently on my feed. People kind of getting some pretty good power with some, doing pistons, cranks on them and getting 800-900 horsepower out of them, which is a lot for a 4-cylinder. I mean, I guess out of all of these, the two GM engines and the Volkswagen would be kind of the ones I would lean towards. Uh, Nothing of them really speak to me, though. I guess is a weird thing. Um, Anthony goes, would you accept the VR6 in this discussion? See, that's a tricky one. On one hand, it's a phenomenal engine. When you put the right exhaust to them, they sound like a pissed off Wookiee, and that's a good thing. So, I don't think they're crazy common. Let me put it this way. I would consider it just because, again, they're an interesting motor. They're a lot like, as we've mentioned before, it's a weird engine in that obviously if you really want to break it down, and it's an extremely narrow V-angle V6 with the firing order of a straight six. The accessories are on the back of the engine, so that might make some rear-wheel drive conversions a bit on the trickier side. But, I mean, there's no denying that they sound great. They're capable of making good power. It's definitely somewhere on the list of things I'd want to play with down the road. I'd also, just for poops and giggles, want to mess around with the VR5, just because 5 cylinders. We're fans of 5 cylinders here, so it'd be an interesting thing to play around with. Doug, one of the swaps I've seen and had the most respect for was the Citation X11 that has a Buick 3.8 swap. Okay. Are we talking the pushrod? I know nothing about that, and I'm not exactly a Buick expert. But when we talk 3.8, are we talking similar pushrod V6, similar vintage to like a Grand National or something to that effect? Let's see here. Andrew goes, Japanese automaker built a 5-cylinder engine for the Acura Vigor. And of course, Volvo built a 5-cylinder engine for the 850 T5R. They are pretty rare motors. Yes. But the Volvo engines, I mean, if you're in the right chat to find where those are, you can get them. They're not crazy expensive. That's actually a Volvo white block like you got in those R's is an engine I'd like to play with in something. I haven't figured it out yet, but it would be like third or fourth on my list of engines I'd want to play around with in a different chassis. Grand National motor, yes. Thank you, Doug, for clarifying. Steve goes, someone is selling a 2008 HHR SS for 8 Gs without a lot of work done with it and 80,000 miles. Here's the thing about GM cars of that vintage. The interiors don't exactly age well, both aesthetically and reliability is not the word, but I would say, best way to describe this, those plastics get dried out and cracky and feel even cheaper with these older cars. It's rare to find one with a good interior in it. I mean, they weren't great new. So, excuse me. Anthony goes, good point. The Buick GM Supercharged 3800 has found its ways into a lot of stuff. Yeah, and that's like another engine that's kind of, if you follow, I forget the guy's YouTube channel, but he plays around with, I think, the Vortec or the Atlas 4200. It's a General Motors straight 6. I think they actually made a 4, a 5, and a 6-cylinder variant of this engine. And the block with some internal work can actually handle, as this dude has proven, a pretty large amount of horsepower. They're pretty interesting, and there you're going to get cheap. It's just the parts are becoming plentiful for them, but they're not exactly, you're not going to go out and be able to get any part you want like you can on a Honda. Anthony, I've seen a tracker with a GNX engine in it. Um, it's madness. I can only imagine. Short wheelbase, high center of mass, torquey as fuck, 80s turbo engine. That has that has an interesting time written all over it, for sure. Steve, the weather kicked my posterior today. I might call it an early night, but not yet. Hey, man, if you need the rest, you need the rest. I totally there with you. Uh, I feel you, man. At any rate, now we're caught up. And then I figure, since we're talking engine swaps, let's talk about, and since I mentioned it before, some engines that I wouldn't mind playing around with. Like I said, the Volvo White Block 5-cylinder is up there. I think if you could turn that thing around, make a rear-wheel drive car out of a small chassis, whether you do the cliche thing and do Miata, or do, like an old MG or even like a Datsun 510 or cars of that size, I think could be a riot. Even the white block out of the C30s, take a 2.4 liter, the one of the naturally aspirated ones, give it some decent compression, some forge stuff, and try to spin that guy. That could be something fun to play with. There's the obvious stuff, LS, Coyote, K-Series, all that fun stuff, but the stuff's kind of been done to death. We've talked to death about the 1UZ. I would love to figure out a chassis to put like a Viper V10 into. Speaking of V10s, we talked about it 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. I'm not 100% sure on the timing, but the Audi 5.2 FSI V10 that came in the S6, I think, or RS6. I forget the exact model, but it's an all Audi V10. It's not the Lambo motor. It's not the R8 motor. It is an actual Audi V10. Those things are crazy cheap. Again, it's an Audi motor, so you're kind of taking, your patience, sanity, all of that, putting all that at risk to kind of play around with it. But you can get them for pretty cheap, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. I personally would just run a custom wiring harness on them, run it through a like a Haltech or a Motec or some aftermarket ECU standalone. Excuse me. And you put a set of matched long tubes on it, it's going to scream. And you have a V10 that sounds the part, looks the part, makes decent enough power, and for not Lamborghini V10 money, let's put it that way. And then for like off-roading stuff, I've always been interested by the, and this is pretty recent, last few years I've been kind of interested in like diesels and stuff like that. But instead of like a 6BT Cummins or something, a 4BT, the 4-cylinder. Now, apparently those don't have like balance shafts on them, so they're kind of vibraty. But it's a small little, I feel like something like that in like a Taco, an old Taco, would be kind of a riot. And kind of cool and kind of different. Anthony goes, I sent Chad a Fox that could use a Coyote. The price was right. I do have, we'll just say, spare parts. And I did actually seriously consider getting a decent Fox body. When my silver car caught fire, I thought about doing a Fox and putting all of the goodies from my old car into that, and kind of building, like, if you're familiar with the channel, the War Admiral, kind of doing a War Admiral light kind of a thing. Nothing on the level of his, but Coyote, maybe boosted. Figure out a way to see if we could get the geometry and everything to work to put the S550 independent rear suspension in the back. The Ford 8.8 is a strong as hell differential, so we know it can handle power. I thought about it, but doing that swap is not a simple bolt-in, just because, the Fox body and the Fox platform was built for a Ford small block pushrod V8. The Coyote is very much not. It might displace the same. It's actually a little more displacement. Fun fact, Ford lied. So their famous original 5.0 was actually a 4.9. But in any rate. So getting that engine in there with things like power steering, the right brakes, all that sort of stuff is a bit of a challenge. Now, the boys over at Blue Sky have it down to a science, but it's not cheap. So we'd fly through a lot of my budget and just putting in the engine. And at the end of the day, there were, I don't want to say creature comforts or any of that sort of stuff, but like modernization. So modern-ish interior, whether it be a double din or something, radio in the center with a decent stereo. I don't need it to be thumping. I don't need like two 12-inch kickers in the back. Forget that. But a good stereo. All the AC, like all the little stuff with an engine swap too, like AC, HVAC control, heat, the whole nine. That stuff, those little things start to add up, and I would have ended up with a cool car, yes, but not exactly something I would want. I wanted in a quote unquote daily, if that makes any sort of sense. Let's see here. Oh boy. Anthony goes, piss off everyone in white block and S2K. I don't think I'd hate that, to be honest. If you could build a white block to kind of get close to the S2K's revs, so I'm talking at least 8,000 RPM. With the way those things sound, I mean, come on, it sound a hell of a lot better than the F22 that was in it. Because Honda engine, and not too many people have figured out how to get rid of the Honda rasp. Steve, still with us, goes, some a-hole made an Earnhardt livery for the Toyota NASCAR in the game. I'm offended. Well, let me ask you a question there, Steve. Would you be offended if there was the original Wrangler Earnhardt livery on, say, a Ford? That's a loaded question, too, by the way. He goes, a Viper V10 and a Land Cruiser. I mean, hell yeah. At that point, you might as well just get the V10 out of the Ram. Because it's designed for, like, not the SRT10 Ram. The Iron Block V10, I think it was a heavy-duty engine. So that it's actually four-wheel drive capable and things like that. Steve goes, will any of your Mustang spare parts fit into my CRV? With enough can-do attitude, a sawzall, and extremely good welding skills, yes. As a bolt-in, no. There's literally nothing about that car. Your best bet would maybe be the brakes. Maybe. But at that point, you'll be doing endos with the CRV, and I'm not sure that's something you want in your family runabout. Yeah, like Anthony said, I'll go to your fab skills. That will technically work. Sean, welcome, buddy. Sean goes, don't forget the absolute chat of the Ford V8, the legendary 4.2. The 4.2 liter Ford V8. Are we going like way back to like the old 260s and stuff, or is that like the V8 that came in like the Lincoln LS? Can't remember. I know they had a small V8 that they put in the Lincoln. I can't remember if it's that engine. I think it's just spouting off engine swap blasphemy. Hey, some people's blasphemy is another person's like fun little project. I mean, case in point. I did a reel on this. Someone took a crashed S2000 chassis and put an original Volkswagen Beetle body on it. I'm sure there are some Honda boys out there who considered that quite blasphemous. So, Doug, heck, I was buying boat parts just to demodernize my 142 build. And it's horses for courses, man. Like, let me put it this way: it's a second car. Yeah, I'll take it straight out of the '90s or late '80s, early '90s Fox body interior with Coyote power and the ability to handle all day, every day. But again, like, I've grown accustomed to a lot of the features that my current car offers. You know, it is what it is. Sean goes, when I saw engine swaps, I knew I was required to attend. I mean, you do throw out some of the, we'll just say, most creative engine swaps in my DMs that out of anyone. So, yeah, I'd say your attendance here was mandatory. So, let's go. Fire them up. Steve, how about a Volvo EV swap from Mark Anthony Volvo? Let me put it to you this way, Steve. You'd just be better off trading the CRV in and getting now the name of Anthony's electric Volvo escapes me. Something 40. I can't remember. XC40? Maybe? Can't remember. Just doing it that way. And fun fact about that car, when we were test driving, because I actually drove Anthony from the airport to the dealership where he bought his. And the way the traction control kicked in was not what I was expecting out of an electric car. You know, I was just feeling it's an electric. It's a dimmer switch, right? It just pull power until it grips. But it pulsed like a internal combustion car feels like when you're on kind of TC or ABS, that sort of stuff, which I thought was very odd, but also not difficult to engage TC in it. So that, you know, that's fun. Sean, so not technically an engine swap per se, but there is a company in Europe that does 3/4 scale Spitfire reproductions using the Isuzu Rodeo and Trooper 3.2 liter V6. When you say 3/4 scale Spitfire, are you talking about the Battle of Britain winning British airplane? Or are you thinking like a Triumph Spitfire, at which point 3/4 scale is redonkulously tiny. Those are small cars to begin with. Let's see here. And our second Yugo attempt at the night is Sean goes a Busso V6 and a Yugo. Yes, a Yugo with an Italian engine. That sounds like a lot of fun to own. Bussos do sound incredible, but Steve, back to their car. No, because he did drive a Ford. Thank you for catching that. But originally, Earnhardt drove a Petty for Dodge. Yes, he drove a Challenger that was sort of a quote-unquote NASCAR kit car that was close to being a pro car, but was enough mass production that enough mass produced so that it was inexpensive. It was an inexpensive way to get into motorsport, but also have a certain level of performance. And that car that Earnhardt drove is now owned by Vanilla Ice. So, Sean goes, the 4.2 liter Ford V8 was an 80s Econo Fox V8 for a couple of years. Econo box, I think he meant. But then again, there was like 93,000 different cars on the Fox platform, so I could be wrong there as well. Prius driveline into a swap into a side-by-side. I mean, that would make the side-by-side so unrelentingly heavy. Because the engine's heavy, the electric motor's heavy, battery pack heavy. You'd be better served trying to figure out a way of just making an electric crossover using those motors. Or something out of, like, say, like the Volvo, the XC40. Or something of that size. Or just do what normal people do and slap a turbo on the side-by-side. Sean goes, yes, I mean the airplane Spitfire. Okay, that's what I was thinking, because to Doug's point, nobody would fit into a 3/4 Triumph. True and real. Facts. Don't get old, chat. I would need a permanent residence to equip the charger at my house. I mean, yes, or well, let me put it to you this way: if I guess permanent residence is that, but a lot of as long as it's it's zoned for it. A lot of landlords, if you rent, would be open to the idea of the ability to charge, especially now that EVs are getting standardized, whether by the plugs themselves. If someone was willing to fit the bill and I owned a house and they wanted to put an EV charger in by a reputable installer, hell yeah, absolutely. Because guess what? That makes the house a little more valuable. And again, it's less. It's not out of my pocket, so it's kind of a win-win. Oh, I didn't read that entire chat. Charger at my house. I'm not opposed to having an EV for local driving, and to be smoked about the smell of my own farts. Solid South Park reference. Sean goes, I never claimed that any of my ideas are good, but hopefully entertaining. True. That is 100% accurate. They're always interesting. They're never boring. I hope one day you have all the money in the world to put a lot of these ideas into practice, because it would make for a hell of a show. Anthony goes, what's up with you Yugo crackheads? Kind of my line of thinking as well. I think the Yugo has gone from being like universally hated to now being kind of like a cult classic. It's weird. I don't really. There are better spends of money if you want to be different, even in that respect. At any rate, desktop done. Steve goes, how about a proper turbo Volvo swap for a DeLorean and not the shit show Renault and Volvo made it for it? I mean, any engine is better than that gutless French piece of bleh. I mean, hell yeah. Like, trying to figure out a way out you could do it, but I mean, could be as simple as taking the subframe out of, pick a Volvo with the 5-cylinder and a turbo. Take the subframe and see if it's manageable mounting it to the DeLorean. But yeah, I mean, the DeLorean was a car that was ahead of its time. It looked awesome. It did everything, and it was let down by a gutless bucket of disappointment. That was the French V6. Like, just awful. Pause that. And it's... So any interesting engine swap into that. The guy who did the LS, a Volvo swap, a K swap. Like, pick an engine that's of interest. Hell, a turbocharged Hayabusa swap would be better than that French engine. Just terrible. Steve goes, I'm trying to move out from where I'm at. Dude, I totally get it. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, no, Steve, you need an electric car. Tisk for not owning one. Like, no. Do you? I mean, the CRV is a fantastic option just because of how many they made, how popular it is in New Jersey, how readily parts are available for it, and how, relatively speaking, it's inexpensive to maintain and or repair. So, Yeah, I mean, you're doing all right, G. Thank you for getting that reference. Yep. Um, Sean goes, Ford Taunus V4 in a Porsche 912, the old one. That is another car that literally pick an engine and you're going to be all right. I think they sell Subaru transmissions that you can block off the axle or the rear drive shaft, like just delete that. So now you effectively have a transaxle for a mid-engine application. Pretty sure Blue Sky's doing that with a mid-engine Fiat, only with an EZ30 to six-cylinder. Which, speaking of engine swaps, that is 100% on the list of really good engines, believe it or not, that I don't think people play around with enough. Just because a flat engine is a pain in the ass to maintain. Spark plugs, things of that nature. But they hold power pretty good. And, you know, again, something where parts are not crazy available, but there's enough out there to where you can find them and be all right. Steve, my grammar is poor today. My apologies. Don't even worry about it, my friend. Do not even worry about it. I never claimed to be grammatically correct, and nor do I demand it of others. I am personally, I'm personally a fan of. Personally, here we go. Case in point, brain. Just point of communication is to take what you want to convey to someone else and for them to be able to understand it. If you're using slang or whatever, or you don't happen to be grammatically perfect, who cares? Again, point of communication. Let's see here. Oh, boy. Sean goes with a Harbor Freight Predator 670 V-twin into a 70s Harley Davidson. I don't think I know nearly enough about that engine or Harleys to even have a comment. Pretty confident Harley guys might have an issue with that, but then again, if it's a Harbor Freight engine, it makes decent power. There are a lot of possibilities for doing something with that. You know, perhaps an F1 inspired lawnmower. Just saying. This might be the most Doug comment I have ever seen. Two-stroke Saabs with no mufflers in everything. That's what I really want. So you have to slow down. You have to be pressing on the accelerator and the brake pedal. People can barely handle pressing one pedal at a time. Car insurance rates would skyrocket in Doug France's America. Steve goes, his Honda CRV would be better without the CVT. Look, man, we've talked about CVTs here a bit. And they have their place. They're not an enthusiast drivetrain by any stretch of the imagination. If you happen to be someone who, is an enthusiast, comes from driving a manual. It honestly is like nails on a chalkboard because it feels like someone's riding a clutch pretty hard in those, and I I don't like them, but I will admit they have their place. And in theory, for day to day driving, especially if you're trying to maximize both performance, not even performance, but when I say performance in like a CRV or like a, I mean this with all due respect, Steve, but like your basic grocery getter, um, to get you out of a side street onto a road or merging onto a highway or all of that, like enough pep to do that, while also when you're just cruising around, puttering around, having the right ratio for fuel economy. All boring stuff, I will freely admit. All just horrible, horrible for like enthusiasts and stuff. Again, I'll freely admit, but and fuel economy, like yay, boring. Um, you know, moving on. Steve goes, a first gen SHO engine in Illumina. So we're going to make a Taurus show and its direct competitor. I can get down with it. That's another engine. Excuse me. That's another engine. I'm assuming you're talking about the one where Yamaha did the heads and everything. The bundle of stakes intake manifold. That's another engine I'd like to play around with. Same goes for the 2.5 liter V6 that called cars like the Contour SVT home. Just because like that was a cool car to me when I was growing up, because my dad had a Contour as his kind of daily runabout, and the SVT was always something that was like, oh, that's kind of cool. They made a sporty version of this. It was it's pretty interesting, and it's always been something I'm like, I wouldn't mind playing around with that. Steve goes, only thinning the herd. Sean, the Isuzu 3.1 turbo diesel and the Ford Ranger any generation. Isuzu. Oh, gotcha. My good sir, Sean, you are by far and away the Isuzu expert. I can't even consider myself. I grew up when I was a kid. Our family had a Trooper. I couldn't tell you the engine. I knew it was a manual. I knew the engine made a decent amount of torque because that's the car I actually learned how to drive a stick shift on when I was like 13, 14 years old. And, excuse me. But beyond that, my experience with the Isuzu is like, weren't they just trailblazers? And that's kind of it. Steve goes, sorry. Sean goes, a Ford show V8 into a second gen MR2. Now we're kind of talking, my friend. Now we're kind of talking. Any interesting engine into a second gen MR2 with the right body kit is a build that, let's just say I win the lottery, you won't have to wait long to see. I still maintain that the white block out of the R's, Volvo, we'll just say P2 R's, I will say that soundtrack in an MR2, I think would be epic. Just beyond epic. Steve goes, I miss going fast, but family first. Yep. To be honest, that might be a business idea to have a, we'll just say a brand of condoms that's like, just remember, if you want to go fast, use this. I'll let you marketeers in chat come up with a more clever tagline. But it is what it is. Family. I have yet to be blessed with a family or a girlfriend or a wife who yells at me for making dumb decisions in my car or having my car being practically fast. So I can kind of get away with all that sort of fun stuff. Like even Greg has, family stuff to consider even with his next car purchase, his next, sports car. fast car, fun car, that sort of thing. So, so yeah, I mean, I totally get it. You know, uh, family's way more important than any car, without a question or a shadow of a doubt. Sean, don't let me fulfill my engine swap fantasies. I'll end up with some hit list in the car community. Newsflash, if, let's just say hypothetically, any of your ideas happen to wander their way onto social media, that's going to happen regardless. Shoot. I had Volvoists coming at me for different ideas and different things and different stuff I liked when I had the C30. You know, not that the overwhelming majority of Volvo enthusiasts are pretty killer, pretty cool. But anytime you start talking about messing with an engine or doing an engine swap or how you go about mods or, oh shoot, God forbid you pick the wrong wheels. God forbid you pick the wrong wheels. People just sing for your head. It's hilarious that no consequence keyboard warrior mentality is something you just have to learn to ignore and just do what the hell you want. You know, I'm funny. We kind of touch on this a little bit. Super. I will get to that in a second because that sounds like a fantastic idea. I will say this. I am almost guaranteeing that I will have Mustang, especially S550 guys, coming at me with the black Mustang build. For going NA. For spending, you know, probably 6-ish K, 7K on Go Fast NA parts. When that's what a good boost setup would cost. And it would make way more power. You know, you're always going to have that. And then you're going to have, you know, that NA versus boost argument every single time. And it's like, I don't care. Like, at the end of the day, I want that car to be able to make about 550 at the wheel, between 540 and 550 at the wheels. Have a red line that starts with an 8, possibly even a 9 on the right fuel. Accessible fuel. Not E85, not C10 or 98. Accessible fuel. So 93, 94 octane, which is something we think we can get away with. Not get away with, but we can actually do reliably. And then just have that thing sing. Because the idea of having an American V8 that revs that high, that is a Coyote, proves that the Voodoo was kind of a pointless exercise. Really appeals to me. And I will 100%, if you go back and you watch the channel, one of my unfinished projects was the Lexus, the IS300. And I wanted to do an NA build on that back in the day. So I've been itching to do a pretty high-end NA build or a high-revving NA build. So yeah. Anthony goes, the Contour, what a freaking weird car to SVT. Yeah, but it was a cool car, man. It had that little V6 in it. I love the idea of small displacement engines based on cylinder count. So like 2.5 liters, kind of a big 4-cylinder, small V6. You know, 3.5, 4 liters, kind of a small V8. Well, V8s can get enormous, but you kind of get what I'm saying. I like that engine, and you can make pretty decent power out of them. And yeah, and if done right, they sound pretty good as well. Sean goes, how's this for an egregious sin? An Audi 4.2 liter V8 into a second Corvette Stingray? Which Stingray are you referring to? Because it's not the second. You're talking like the C3. I mean, if you're talking a second gen, that is pure unadulterated heresy. But if it's a C3, and especially if it's in the mid to late 70s version of the C3, those engines were hot dog water to begin with. So putting any sort of better engine in there is, you're not going to get an argument from me on that. You might get an argument from Elliot, but not me. So, the Trooper rocks. Yep, thank you, Steve. Sean goes 3.1 TD engine. We're talking about the Isuzu diesel again. Made about 140 horsepower and 270 torque. You can get it insane power from them. So, I mean, hell yeah. I mean, why isn't that engine in your Isuzu? Just saying. Steve, I will have a fast car in the future, hopefully sooner. Yeah, man. I mean, in due time. Case in point, I didn't start with the dream car, the Mustang, right? I started with... what did I start with? Technically speaking, as far as the channel is concerned, I started with the BMW, the E46. Sounds like an expensive first car to start with, and it was, but not at purchase price, which should tell you something. Not the best purchase I ever made. Probably the worst car I've ever bought. And then, but before that, I had the IS300. I had that IS300 going back to like 08, 09. It was the first car I bought with my own money. You know, I had a Focus before that, but the IS300 was the first one where it was like my car. My parents didn't put a down payment. That was my car with my money. Worked on that. Then I went to the C30. Then we went to the Mustang. And I worked for it. You know, like you can get let me put it to you this way, Steve. You can get a fun car for $5,000. You know where you're looking. You know if you're doing it. And maybe that's a thing we should discuss with Keith next time he's on the show. Is, a $5,000 fun car. There are a whole mess of cars that are fun or with like very little money you can make fun out there. So, I don't know where you are in life. I don't really need to know where you are in life, but I'm just saying, like, it's not as far off as you may think. And finally, I'm going to get to Super Nelomar. If I butchered that name, I apologize. I am notoriously terrible at pronouncing names. But a VW 3.6 liter VR6 into a Suzuki Swift GTI. Yes, 100% can get behind that. We were talking about VR6s and things like that before. And the Swifts are tiny cars, so that sounds like a recipe for a rocket ship. Sounds like a ton of fun. And then it goes an Audi 2.5T into a Mini Cooper all-wheel drive. Again, I mean, let's go one step further, right? Let's take an RS3 driveline, stuff it in a Mini, and just have a hell of a time. I mean, that sounds epic. Hell yeah. Stay BRB, gotta wash the hands, good job. 16 chainsaw engines arranged into a radial setup into a Cessna. That is a lot going on. I'm sure it could work. I don't have any idea how. You'd have to be pretty good engine timing and all that. Sounds like a lot. Methinks you could just use the Harbor Freight engine. Sean goes, second gen Corvette is what I meant. No, we will not be putting an Audi engine in that. Like I said, C3, prime Corvette for swappage. I will 100% stick by that. It's the later models, when like a big block was making like 180 horsepower. Go nuts with that. Steve goes, to be truthfully honest with y'all, I missed my Davey Allison Thunderbird. I want to find another one. Those were the Fox Body Thunderbirds, weren't they? Because you could make that into a little bit of a trip. That could be. It's Fox Body. So there's endless potential with something like that. Andrew goes, did you love that Lexus? Yes, I did. I would absolutely buy another and do sort of a. See, I don't know exactly what I would do. My original thought was. This is before shifting lanes was even a thing. And this was even before I knew just how good the Coyote was. But I always liked the 5.0 that they were making and the power it had and all that. I always thought of, I mean, it would be kind of a full circle thing to put a 5.0 Coyote into an IS300. I'd also love to play around with the idea of putting a 2UR, which is kind of the Toyota version of the Coyote, into the first gen IS300. Because that body style is incredible. Now, the problem is that I'd want to do some body mods and things like the TRD front bumper, TRD rear bumper, and like there's not a lot of options as far as front bumpers and body kits. I don't even want to go as far as to say like a body kit because I don't want it to be something insane. There are some wide body stuff, but what I'd probably do if I was to buy that car all over again is I'd probably get the Sport Cross. Figure out a way to wide body it flush. I do not like wide body kits that look glued on or like say a Challenger or Charger wide body. And I don't like the riveted Rocket Bunny style either. I would want it to look flush. Whether that be actual sheet metal, that's a Jesse at Blue Sky question. But I'd like that in a wide body with a bit of a wing out the back and some pissed off engine up front. Preferably a V8 of some kind. Or, again, if money is kind of, if money's not really an object, that could be an insane build for like a Viper engine. Figure out like whether it be an old 8.0 or an 8.4. Make like 600-ish NA horsepower with that. That could be interesting. That could be a hell of a lot of fun. But yeah, to answer your question, Andrew, I miss that. I do miss that car. It's the car I learned how to drift in. It's the car I learned how to kind of have controlled fun because it didn't make a ton of power. I think it made like maybe 180, 200 at the wheels. But it was pretty easy to slide around. It was a lot. It was a hell of a lot of fun. I actually got screwed out of a set of long tube headers on that. Thank you, DZOD Motorsports, for taking my money and never delivering the product I ordered. Steve, Chad, Forza is making your AI drive a Camaro. You should change that. I have no idea, Steve. Like I said, I played that years ago when it first came out. We grinded some games the other night. I have no idea. I didn't even know a Camaro was an option. I didn't even know how to change that, if I'm being brutally honest. So it's something to, again, a tomorrow Chad problem. And he goes, awesome. I love the Lexus I got out. Look, the Lexus makes phenomenal cars. I mean, they have had some bad ones. Don't get me wrong. The SC430 convertible comes to mind. I don't know what the plan was there stylistically, but had a 3UZ engine in it, so that's pretty good. I mean, if you're looking for a down and dirty, not looking to make a ton of horsepower, maybe 400 tops, got the crank, the 3UZ is a great option. It's not going to handle boost. It's not going to handle a ton of power really well. Do a little bit of head work, put some cams in it, and you'll be all right. I still remember, what the hell was it? I think any of you remember the show Rides? With like Chip Foose and I want to say his name was Chris something or other. But Reese Millen worked with Toyota to do the first gen IS300, but they put a 3UZ in it. So the 4.3 liter V8. They backed it up with the Getrag 6-speed out of a Mark IV Supra. And it made like 340 horsepower. It would have stomped on the the E46 M3 of the day if it ever made it to production. I do remember seeing that at the New York Auto Show that year, and man, I've wanted that ever since. I wouldn't do the 3UZ just because the 1UZ can handle so much more power, and I'd want to boost it. But if I did that engine, but yeah, that was arguably one of my favorite of those shows ever, because it was like that was the inspiration for me to buy the IS300 when I could. Believe it or not, within $5,000 of each other at the time I bought my IS300 was a Volkswagen R32 and an Acura NSX. NSX might have been like 6 or 7, but not much. They were all in like within $25,000 to $32,000 when I bought it, like, which is insane to me. Because as much as I love the Lexus, if I could go back in time, it's like buy the NSX, find some shit kicker, profit in 20 years. Like, holy shit, has it been 20 years? No, 10 to 15 years. There we are. Superb over on YouTube. My 4.2 liter V8 Audi S4 wagon is sitting in my garage, broken. Bummer, dude. Of course, the change took a massive shit, but she'll be back. That's the most important part. Stuff breaks, but if you can, fix it up, get it back on the road. I actually looked at another one of my favorite cars that I never got a chance to buy was the Audi RS4. Came this close. I didn't even look at him when I was looking to buy the new car, like when I got the black Mustang. I didn't even look at him because I knew if I started looking at him, I'd be so tempted. But the RS4, I love that thing. And sort of the RS4 I could afford back in the day would have been an S4 with that 4.2 liter V8 slightly detuned. I've always been a fan. Andrew, I've always thought about owning a Mercedes-Benz AMG car. It'd be such a fun and nice, expensive toy to own and drive. Yeah, I mean, the AMG GT, I think it's the GT. GTS, technically, if we're fantasy here. I want to own one. And one of my favorite builds on the Daily Driven Exotics channels is Mike Essa's AMG GT because, you know, bigger turbos, the 9. Can't wait to see what that thing actually puts down on the dyno and stuff. But, like, that's a car I want. Sean goes, a carved and supercharged 2J back into a Mark IV Supra. Wow. That would hurt a lot of feelings. Here's the thing. There was at the time when I had my Lexus, when I was looking at power adders, things like that, there was a company that made a centrifugal supercharger kit for the GE in the IS300. I always thought it would be kind of cool to kind of take the turbos off and do that with the small pulley and stuff on a 2J just to mess with people. I don't know about the carved part though. Yeah, it's a tough sell. But keep throwing them, Sean. I love them. Andrew loves Lexus because they are a premium glorified luxury car company that is a division of Toyota Motor Corporation. That's a great thing. They're very nice to own. I love the ISF. True and real. Love it. Same with you. I have a brochure for the ISF when it first came out in 2008. I love the GSF. That's a sweet record. Look, the F-line of Lexus, like, I remember when the ISF first came out, and again, I had the IS300. I was like, that was my dream. That was like inspiring me to like, oh man, if I could just put a V8 into this, blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, oh, V8s, some of these V8s aren't that crazy expensive, man. Like, this, that. And then it's like the crippling reality of the W55 manual transmission that came in those IS300s wasn't up to the task. I think you could get 300 out of them. You could do the W58, which was the same basic trans, a little bit stronger, that came in the naturally aspirated Mark IV Supras. But even then, you're talking 340 horsepower. R154s were actually inexpensive at the time, but now we're adding parts, right? We're adding a trans, we're adding the install, we're adding potentially tuning. So, etc. Sean goes, one of those two-stroke supercharged diesel V8s into an 80s Jaguar XJ. I mean, my man, you need to win the lottery because a lot of this stuff would be hilarious and highly entertaining to watch happen. How about a V10 into a mid-90s Mustang? You mean like New Edge, where it almost actually got a V10? Look, the SN95s, as long as you're not messing with Cobras and Cobras R's, I really don't care. I'm not a Mustang purist when it comes to those because they're not really. The SN95 was oh shit, nobody wants. The SN95 was Ford admitting they were like, oh crap, we messed up. Nobody wants us to make what would eventually become the Probe. But originally that was supposed to be a Mustang, and it was a Mazda 626. Like, nobody wanted that. So they rebodied it, put the first real iteration of the mod motor in, and went to work. The New Edge was kind of an evolution to that. Like, I'm down for swaps in those. Again, if you're not messing with like the R's or the Cobras and the Cobra R's, go for it. I'm down. I'm here for it. I wouldn't recommend a Triton V10. Those things are horrible. But yeah, like. Anyway, Abizim. Sorry again. If I mispronounced that, I apologize. I don't know what Streamlabs is doing over on the YouTube chat. But please do not listen to it. I don't know what the bot is doing. You guys are welcome. I apologize. And everything like that. But Abysm over on the YouTube side of things. Ford Duratec 2.5 liter. Same engine that came in the Mazda 3 with the gapped rings. They could take up to 400 wheel horsepower reliably. Popular swap in Mazda 3, 6, and NC Miatas. It's good information to have. I mean, I remember hearing a lot about Duratec Ford engines. I know a lot of them ended up in like some spec racing series, like feeder series for like open wheel and stuff like that. So they've always been an engine that I've been like one eye on, or not even one eye, but like, I mean, hell yeah. I mean, let me put it this way. 400 wheel horsepower is not a joke, especially out of something like a 4-cylinder. It's an interesting one. Thank you. Okay, tech mate. I was kind of trying to figure out what was going on. What kind of Niger is the SN95? I have a Fox body with a 303. I'm not sure what you mean by Niger. If you can let me know. But I'm rebuilding a Ford 7.3 liter diesel 2000. He keeps asking what knee gear is in it. No idea. Yeah, I have no idea. Where do I get that out? Let me just try something. Let me check something real quick here, chat. Dashboard. Sean goes with the Lexus LFA V10 into a 95 Mustang. There we go. Save. I mean, let me put it to you this way. It would sound epic. It'd be pretty awesome. Good luck finding a LFA. Good luck finding finding one of those engines. Man, I'm having to moderate chat more than usual. A lot of bots. Guess that's a good thing. We're finally on the come up, chat. I mean, here's the thing, Sean. If we're talking to let me put it this way. Sean goes, the GM Atlas inline 6 into an R32 Skyline. Yeah. Why not? The GTT would be an excellent home for that. I mean, there are people throwing LSs in those and all sorts of engine swaps. I mean, it's going to be tricky getting the all-wheel drive system to work with that in the GTR. Yeah, Streamlabs, I turned you off. Turn that off. Save. Because I know that's a thing they sort of. But I think it's the VH41. Has a four-wheel drive variant where the diff and stuff are part of or integrated into, or the housing is integrated into. I don't know. I forget exactly, but it's the diff was integrated in such a way that you didn't have to have the engine so high, that it like you could have everything integrated so the engine wasn't sitting like out of the engine bay, and that's why like it became a pretty. After I think one of the first cars the Skid Factory did was the Nissan Stagia wagon with the GTR R34 GTR front end conversion bodywork. But apparently those can work all wheel drive with a Tesla and that sort of stuff. Get this stuff out of here. Sorry guys. We're actually doing crazy well over on YouTube, for us at least. Yeah, guys, if you're over on YouTube and you see Streamlabs popping in and saying stuff like, I apologize. I don't know. Okay, cool. Let's see here. Price point. Oh, you're talking about the Duratec again. Sorry. Many guys put together a cheap turbo setup on the 2.5 and a Mazda 3 for only a few $1,000s, car included. Yeah, it sounds like a pretty inexpensive way to go fast. Steve, you might want to head over to YouTube and take notes. Seems like an inexpensive way to. Tech, it's I use Streamlabs as part of my streaming software, and I'm trying in the background to turn it off, but I use Streamlabs OBS for the hide starting. This should hopefully it's fixed. I don't. And all right. Yeah, sorry again. I'm sorry about that on YouTube, guys. Just ignore it. I think I fixed it, but at the risk of sitting here and watching me try to, be my own tech support, I guess we'll just kind of move on. And now, display chat is going weird. Fun. Anyway, let's get back to chat. Tonight on Shift Stream, Chad fights bots, Sean puts a chainsaw engine in an airplane, and Steve buys a Tesla. Pretty much. Tech, I have to be 100% honest with you. When you say knee gear, maybe someone in Facebook can kind of point out. What the heck is a knee gear? I apologize for my ignorance. I have honestly no idea. Facebook. There we go. I think I automatically deleted it. Anyway, Sean, as I recall, Duratec four-cylinder engines were based off of a Volvo engine design. The V6 ones were somewhat Porsche, and VW, I recall, was 3.3. My parents' old Taurus was somewhat a Porsche co-design. Yeah. Um, that's a lot of information, Sean. I have no. Yes, sure. I don't know enough on the subject to comment. Uh, yeah. Good point on the D engines though, because we weren't even thinking of those earlier. Ab. Um, but Anthony. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, it's if we're talking engines, like Honda's kind of a um, I mean, Honda's kind of an easy choice. I mean, there's probably a fix or a mod or something that makes kind of any Honda engine a performer. Kind of what they're known for. Chatbot. I mean, yeah, Tech. I mean, when we start talking about let me put it to you this way: like a lot of your high-end drag Hondas, like I know a lot of them at like World Cup, like especially in the stick shift class. Those boys, I get like 3 to 4 runs out of their engines, and then they gotta either do the conrods or some. I don't know enough, but like it is absurd the limits they're pushing those engines to, and I mean, they're small engines, and anytime you're pushing small engines that are competing with like LSs, Coyotes, you know, big displacement well, not even big displacement V8s, but bigger displacement, and you're still making the same performance, you're pushing an engine pretty hard. It's why a lot of times when they start making crazy power, that's when you start seeing like the billet blocks. Like I know Ilmor does Mitsubishi blocks. I mean, shoot, they did Thor, which is a 2,000 horsepower capable, roughly based on a Porsche four-cylinder design. But you start pushing that. But even that has limits because, yeah, in the street, there's replacement for displacement in forms of boost. But at high-end racing, you know, there's only so much cylinder pressure the materials at hand can handle. Oh, for Christ's sake. This stupid fuck. I'm just going to turn that off. Anyway. Okay. Here we go. Another cheap setup is the SR20DE, not turbo, and then getting all the turbo parts for it that bolt right up. Cheap on the Sentra SER, 200SX SER, and Sentra SE, etc. I did know a few guys that kind of have gone down that route. I looked at SR20s for a minute, and they're good engines. They're affordable. They can make decent power, especially on an inexpensive side of things. I got to be honest with you. I got lost in the black top, red top, you know, fluorescent neon glittering, like all the different variants and stuff. It's like, Okay, I get it. I'm just gonna have to ask someone if I ever go down this path. Sean over on Facebook goes the GM 3.8 series, series 2 or 3 into a Porsche Boxster. I mean, certainly does. I mean, I'll say this again, like Boxster. Um, um, I was never a huge fan of the Boxster platform. And any guys, I get it. I get it. I get what they are. I get their capabilities. I get their engineering. I totally get it. Never a big fan of them. So if you want to do swaps with them, I'm here for it. 100%. Um, uh, Alrighty. Andrew, same thing as the 500 that I used to have. If you watch the Ford 500, by the way, Peter Horbury S80 story that the 500 and the Freestyle and the Taurus X and the Ford Flex and the Explorer benefited from the Volvo P2 S80 that Ford Motor Company benefit from the original P2 Volvo S80 that I own. I mean, that's what you hope for with the cross pollination with all the FOMOCO, right? You know, that era where Ford owned Volvo, Ford owned Aston Martin, Jaguar. That's why Aston Martin has Volvo parts on it. Um, you know, and especially like the Swedes do have a reputation for kind of being on the over engineering side of things. I don't know what the hell this is doing. Let's see here. The GM 3.8 liter V6 is one of the most underrated engines. It's too bad they're only in mainly Buicks behind an auto with front wheel drive, but they're basically an LS with two cylinders lopped off. I mean, those are interesting engines, simply because of you're starting to see people play around with them. A lot of those old GM 6 cylinders, which is pretty cool, and like the simple design, pretty easy ways to kind of make power with them is they're I mean pretty interesting engines to be honest. Uh, Sean with here's a realistic engine swap idea: a Mitsubishi 4G63T into a '90s Dodge Avenger. So we're just going full DSM with and making an American Galant VR4. I think was the Galant. I could be wrong on that though. But yeah. Message settings. That's just in here. Aha. Hold on. Sorry, I think I have a fix for our YouTube viewers. Just trying to look at that real quick. Oh, I have to keep it connected. All right, that's a tomorrow chat thing. I apologize. All right, I'm just gonna keep and moderating on this side. Anyway, Andrew sent a link. Let's see what this is. An ad. Sweet. In the meantime, Ab over on YouTube, I just wanted to mention that people are starting to design all-wheel drive setup for the Mazda Speed 6. Adapting it into the Mazda 3 for big power guys, this might become a thing like the all-wheel drive Hondas. That was actually, when I first started reading that is actually where I was thinking. But no, that's interesting. I have to admit, I do not know much about the Mazda world. About the most I got into Mazdas when I had the C30 back when Mazda, Volvo, all them were Ford, was you had, I knew that the European Focus hatch, the Volvo C30, I guess the all P1 Volvos for that matter, and the Mazda 3 shared a platform. Volvo guys, correct me if I'm wrong, especially on the Mazda end, but I know like things like suspension parts off the Mazda. I know the Mazda Speed 3 of the same era, like sway bars and stuff like that, was a cheap performance upgrade for the Volvos. Actually makes me wonder if the platforms were shared enough to where like the Volvo all-wheel drive works, because I know with the C30s, the all-wheel drive swap is relatively simple. But like the C30s were designed with the tunnel for the drive shaft that the S40 and the V50s were. So that swap is, again, none of the stuff is simple, but it's simpler than kind of engineering something from something else. Steve, my Facebook updated and crashed 4 times. That is unfortunate. Sean goes, mid-engine LS swap. I love Sean's ideas. I mean, you could make short-form content just on these ideas alone. Just throwing it out there. Mid-engine LS swap into a Chevy HHR panel van. You may die, and nobody will have any idea what blew there, and your doors off. Inevitably, a remodel someone's living room from the outside. I mean, anything that's sort of, how do I put this delicately? West Virginia engineered to be mid-engine, probably going to have some handling quirks. So, I mean, at that point, you might as well just try to figure out a way to like mid-engine swap a express van. And Anthony goes, correct on the suspension. Thank you, Anthony. I need to close some things. Ooh. There we go. Alrighty. Alrighty. Mazda Speed, Ford Focus, C-Max, Mazda 3, Ford Focus, C-Max, and a few other Fords. Volvo P1 all have a lot of part swappability. I remember, and I know, like, you know, from like an engine side, Focus RS parts will fit on on the C30s and stuff. It's been a minute since I've been in that community, so a lot of the stuff I'm forgetting. But I mean, there's a fun swap: Volvo 5-cylinder and a Mazda. I mean, at that point, just buy a C30, but it's where my brain went. Ab on YouTube, in the 2000s, Mazda and Ford had a partnership, and the Duratec 4 and 6 cylinders are essentially Mazda engines. I mean, yeah, I knew the Ford and Mazda partnership, or what have you, runs deep. Because like we were talking about before, I don't know if you were here, like back when it came time to replace the Fox-bodied Mustang, a rebodied Mazda 626 was going to be the next Mustang. Thankfully, Ford came to their senses and rebadged it as a Probe, and I know like the B2000 is effectively a Ranger. I don't know exactly how deep it is, but the bodies I think are pretty much identical. Sean, just the HHR has some really real proportion. It's just the HHR has some really weird proportions for mid-engine anything. I mean, yeah, of course, stuff that wasn't really designed for that, and it was a sort of a classic rethink on a panel van from like the 50s and 60s that was really kind of a compact slash mid-sized car aimed at competing with like the likes of like a PT Cruiser. You know, admittedly, and I'm saying this very loosely, but it is more desirable than a PT Cruiser in my opinion. I can't stand the PT Cruiser, so it's not saying much, but here we are. And he goes, yes, the B2000 is a 4-cylinder Ranger. Awesome. Fantastic. All right. Anything else before we wrap up here, chat? I gotta figure out YouTube. I mean, YouTube guys, thank you so much for sticking around, commenting, all that sort of stuff. I appreciate you guys. 100%. Thanks for chiming in. We try to do this every Wednesday, and we talk about pretty much anything car related. So, AbTech, come on down. And no Streamlabs, we will not be doing that. Last from Ab over on YouTube, another common engine that does will is the Mazda BP. That standard engine and a MB Miatas, they take boost very well. Stock engine, I've seen 300 wheel horsepower with a decent tune will be reliable. Huh. I have to start looking at about I'm gonna have to start looking at these old Mazdas a little bit. A lot of interesting information, man. I appreciate that. That's pretty awesome. Let's see here. Oh boy. Sean goes, Plymouth Prowler with a 440 from an RV because the engine will last longer than a modern Hemi from the RV. I mean, what? Steve goes, what is favorite rebadged Ford that Ford had their technology on? It's an interesting one. I thought something for tomorrow or next week. You're just talking about 440 Max Wedge. Got it. I mean, yeah, that'd be pretty damn interesting. Put a little 6-pack on that. But then again, Gen 3 Hemis are really reliable. I forget the years, but they take the mods pretty well. But yeah, Anthony, busted low miles RVs are cheap ass source for Chrysler 440. Oh, okay. That brings in the RVs, recreational vehicles. But busted low mile RVs are cheap ass sources for Chrysler 440s. People will sometimes pay you to haul things off. All right, Sean, there's your answer. Get that 440, and I think that's your engine for Timmy, not the undersized turbo LS. Just kidding, man. Do you? All right. On that note, guys, I think that's a good spot for us to sign off. Ab Tech, all you guys over on YouTube, man. Thanks for tuning in to our usual Facebook crew. Thank you guys as always. Thank you for supporting. Doug, thank you for the stars again. Appreciate y'all, you guys. I'm gonna go rest up. Next week we may have a guest. I haven't worked that out entirely, but we may have a guest, possibly two. Working on some stuff. But yeah, guys, tonight's been awesome. A lot of fun, a lot of talk. Pretty awesome that it was basically we got to sit down and spend a good amount of time with chat. Appreciate that. I will try to figure out YouTube for next week. I have no idea what the moderator thing is. It's annoying. I'm gonna have to contact tech support on that one. But Guys, I enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun. We'll catch you next week again. We do this every Wednesday. But for